Bring in show music, please.
Hi, I'm CNBC producer Katie Kramer. Today on Squawk Pod. What a week. The Fed cut a key interest rate by 25 basis points, and what would be a major headline takes a backseat to the election hangover.
I think you have to be introspective about what's happening in this country.
What's to come in a second Trump administration? Former presidential candidate and Donald Trump supporter Vivek Ramaswamy lays out a plan on the border crisis.
People who are already in detention, who have not yet even integrated into the communities of this country, who have come even over the course of the last year. 12 months is not a time period for establishing roots. Easy case, automatic deportation.
And rebuttal from former Trump staffer, now on the other side, Anthony Scaramucci.
And if we're talking about grace, I would put aside those sorts of things, and I would focus on growing the economy and making people more prosperous.
You might be having similar conversations. We are hitting the emotional core of America's politics. Plus, the 5-day-a-week office making a comeback, a brewing back and forth between the president-elect and the Fed chief he hired, and, yep, it's the economy.
If we thought a recession was going to happen 2 years ago, for sure, and it didn't, aren't we 2 years closer to one actually coming around?
It's Friday, November 8th, 2024. Squawk Pod begins right now.
Stand Andrew by in 3, 2, 1. Cue Andrew.
Good morning and welcome to Squawk Box right here on CNBC on this Friday morning. We are live at the NASDAQ market set in Times Square. I'm Andrew Sorkin along with Joe Kernen and Becky Quick, who is off today.
Yes.
Right. I was so used to saying and Becky Quick.
I heard you. I wonder where you were
was
going
thinking to
with
myself, and she's off today.
I feel her presence.
You feel her presence?
Always.
Yeah.
So she's not here physically. Might be able to get her to call in, although I'm not sure what she had planned. She may not want to do that. May not.
The Dow and S&P 500 are each up 4% of the week. And you know what? This is one of those moments when you say, if you're not in the market, right? It's those days. You remove those days, the biggest loser days and the biggest gainer days, and you're nowhere. A reminder today, we keep talking about the Dow Jones Industrial Average. It's different today. NVIDIA and Sherwin-Williams replacing Intel and Dow Inc., and it is effective for today's session. So when it starts, 9:30 this morning, those guys are in, the other guys are out. Meantime, let's show you Treasury yields. That's been one piece of the puzzle we've all been trying to understand, and whether the bond vigilantes are going to ultimately come for us. The 10-year note, 4.298. The 2-year Treasury at 4.17.
And we'll talk all about interest rates and all kinds of things. But for some reason,
mortgage rates going up. Yeah.
I think that I hope NVIDIA is not an allegory for the entire market, Andrew. And by that I mean, here we are getting in at $3 trillion. It's made unbelievable moves. Is it going to go to $6 trillion? It might. It might. We don't know. With AI, there's a lot of. But then again, there's plenty of room if there's competition or if it's not quite as exciting. If the futures aren't. I guess the future is bright for AI. You can't discount that. But here we are. And in the past, when it's happened, the companies have continued to do well, like Apple. I've just got.
But it's not like it's just in the market for the first time and the only.
But in the Dow.
Yeah, but it's. Most people, I think, have
if it just stays where it is, world. Right? But if it just stays where it is, it's going to be an achievement. If it goes down, every point, how much that takes off the Dow. I guess you know what? I'm worried about the entire landscape from here. There's some thing, and you've talked about how if Elon Musk does do what he wants to do, there will be pain. I don't know if there will be blood
on the way, and you got to hope that it's good on the other end. But yes,
right. But there hasn't been a recession in a long time. We've racked up a lot of debt, both administrations. I'm not blaming either one, but that's got to be dealt with. And I just think we were waiting for. If we thought a recession was going to happen 2 years ago, for sure, and it didn't, aren't we 2 years closer to one actually coming around? Usually.
We're always, yes.
Okay.
When you're in the 9th and 10th and 11th inning,
right.
You're closer to the 12th inning.
So I just have a feeling, Trump comes in, he's going to do some of these things that maybe are good long term. Tariffs, trying to bring manufacturing home.
Today, the FOMC decided to take another step in reducing the degree of policy restraint by lowering our policy interest rate by 0.25 percentage point. We continue to be confident that with an appropriate recalibration of our policy stance, strength in the economy and the labor market can be maintained, with inflation moving sustainably down to 2%.
That was Fed Chair Jay Powell outlining the rationale for yesterday's quarter-point rate cut. Powell was also asked about the possibility and legality of being fired by President Trump, who initially appointed him to the job.
Some of the president-elect's advisors have suggested that you should resign. If he asked you to leave, would you go?
No.
Can you follow up on, do you think that legally you're not required to leave?
No.
Do you believe the president has the power to fire or demote you, and has the Fed determined the legality of a president demoting at will any of the other governors with leadership positions?
Not permitted under the law.
Not what?
Not permitted under the law.
Let's get to our senior economics reporter, Steve Leisman, with more on the Fed decision, more on Chair Powell's comments. As the 10-year has ticked higher, hasn't that tightened conditions instead of loosening conditions a little bit? Haven't mortgage rates gone up, Steve? It's also hard to understand, and it's perverse.
That's exactly what I asked Powell yesterday, whether or not he needed to lean against it, and he was like, way.
Wow. I hesitate to say great minds, because this might be all we're agreeing on.
It's a mind meld, Joe. That's what's going on. But let me go through the basics of what happened, and then we'll get back to this question here. So they cut rates by a quarter, as expected, down to 463, and they did suggest more to come. Fed Chair Jay Powell said the central bank was on a course towards neutral, but in no particular hurry to get there. He tried to present this status quo policy outlook as if nothing had changed, even while, of course, much has changed with the presidential election. The Trump presidency promises a vastly different fiscal regime, and Powell responded that the Fed would essentially take it as it comes.
Of course, the real question is not the effect of that law. It's all of the policy changes that are happening. What's the net effect? And, the overall effect on the economy at a given time. So I think that's a process that takes a lot of time and that we go through all the time with every administration, constantly. And this will be no different.
Futures markets ended up a bit more dovish in their outlook than they started before the meeting. Probabilities for rate cut in December, 92%. Then it goes 38% for January and back up to 78% for March of 2025. And then you have these higher yields already and higher stocks. The result, I think the market and the Fed's own outlook are more closely aligned now, though the market has next year one less rate cut built in compared to the Fed's September projections, Joe. So we'll just watch that. That's not a big deal. It's interesting. The market came to where the Fed was even before what happened with the presidential election. So I don't know, Joe. It's very weird. It's very weird because the stock market rising is a loosening of conditions. Bond yields rising is a tightening of conditions. I don't know the extent to which they offset. Obviously, they offset, all things being equal, in favor of equity financing more than they do debt financing.
All right. Do you want to do worst case scenarios first or best case scenarios first for what happens now? Which do you want to do? Tell me which one, and I'll tell you.
You mean for the presidential election?
For what happens? For what happens with the policies. Let's do the worst case scenario first. Tariffs and other policies cause some reflation, and immediately trying to pare down the government and not spending much causes a slowdown. So we go into a stagflation. What's the Fed supposed to do if that happens?
Joe, I want to give some advice to the Trump administration. Are you ready?
Uh-huh.
You can, and I said this when he did SALT. You can do big changes, and the American economy can adapt, but it's important to give business a runway.
Okay.
In other words, let consumers adapt. And that's really a big answer to your question, Joe, which is, tell me how it's implemented. Tell me how big it is. If he wants to put tariffs on, okay, maybe what you say is, over the course of a 2-year period, we're going to have a rising tariff rate that will try to induce and incentivize companies to bring back manufacturing to America.
Well, you're doing my best case scenario. You're doing my best case scenario now. So that's what I was going to say. The other side is that let's say it's gradual and you just do tariffs like that, and let's say that in terms of deregulation and cutting spending and shrinking the government, let's say that all becomes actually growth oriented. So you don't get the inflation and you actually have more growth. Then what does the Fed do? So either way, I mean, I can see, but you kind of got into the best case scenario while you were explaining what to do to avoid the worst case scenario.
Right, exactly. Look, I don't know. I think the Fed has to stand back, and I think tariffs overall are very, very harmful to the global economy. I think they're ultimately harmful to the U.S. economy. Joe, if I could just tell you one thing, you know, when I was in Russia, all the products there absolutely sucked, right?
Yep.
And I always wondered, did they suck because of communism, which took away the profit incentive, or did they suck because of protectionism, which took away any incentive? One of the things that imports do to the U.S. economy and to all economies is they create competition. If you close the borders, you'll have all these shiny products and none of them will work.
You ever been to Budapest?
I have not.
I think you probably saw it, though. Beautiful Renaissance architecture right next to something that looks like the worst prison, and it's like an office building. And it right next.
That was true throughout the former Soviet Union.
The commies came in, and everything they built looks just awful. It's a blight on all the architecture. And then right next to it is this beautiful European, everywhere. And it's very strange. It's like perfect juxtaposition of communism versus freedom and capitalism. All right, thank you.
Exactly. So,
thanks, listener. I hope you're ready for this next one, Sorkin. I got so many things to say about this.
Okay.
President-elect Trump has named Susie Wiles as chief of staff. She's been running Trump's political operation for the last 4 years. She's going to be the first woman ever to be chief of staff. In a statement, Trump said Susie is tough, smart, innovative, and universally admired and respected. And I saw a lot of positive comments from Democrats. She works across the aisle. If you look behind, if you pull back the curtain, she is reportedly the person who has maybe tempered some of Trump's worst impulses during the campaign and ran the most disciplined campaign. I guess he did have at least one strong woman. I don't know. Mark Cuban maybe didn't see this woman, didn't know she was around. But she deserves it, apparently. Pat Summerall's daughter. Now, remember Pat Summerall, remember he was an Arkansas Razorback, actually played with the Detroit Lions, and they won a championship. So I think it was like in the 50s. I think that's like the last time maybe the Lions did. But maybe not everyone knows, but there's also how many chief of staffs ended badly in the first. You've mentioned a lot. You've quoted a lot. You've quoted a lot of them. Look, you've quoted John Kelly. I think you actually played some recordings of John Kelly and what he said.
If in fact she is the one who was responsible for the strategy that led to his win.
Great campaign.
Obviously, this is one of the campaigns for the ages.
She's tough. She's tough, and she's just back to no strong woman. That was a great comment. We haven't seen much of him since that comment, I think. But we'll see the mooch today.
We are seeing the mooch today.
Yeah.
We are seeing the mooch today.
That'd be fun.
We'll discuss what's happened and where things are headed.
But he's on with Vivek.
Which is even better.
It is better.
Even better, because we can actually hear from both sides, and we can hear where they can find some common ground.
There's no common ground.
No, you know what, though? I said this to you on Wednesday.
There's no common ground.
Did
you read the notes about what Mooch is going to say?
But we're going to figure out a way as a country. We're going to have to. Even folks who are frustrated and this was not their choice. We have 4 years, and we're going to. I know you think I'm crazy.
You didn't read it. You might be okay. You've been doing all right. Jimmy Kimmel is not doing all right.
Well,
Stephen Colbert is not.
I'm not those people, and
Nancy's not doing all right.
I'm sure there are lots of people who feel frustrated and put a lot of their efforts into the other candidate. There's no question.
Joe's doing all right.
But you know what?
He's smiling and laughing. I think he's happy. I do.
And I also say for those folks who feel vindicated and who won, the other thing that's incumbent, I would also argue, upon them is to try to embrace those on the other side who didn't win, who may feel that way. I think it's important because it's the only way we're going to get there. I disagree.
The honeymoon's already over. I'm already. Look, it is. It is.
It's Friday morning.
No. I'm already seeing the same old stuff. I'm already seeing the same. We're going to hear it. For 4 years, we're going to hear how bad he is again. Then there's one day where all of a sudden he gets 73 million votes, and everyone sees, wow, maybe we didn't understand the actual mood of the country. And it's like a wake-up call.
But they're going to go. They're going to go multiple times.
You have been better than the average.
No, I'm saying, look, I think you have to be introspective about what's happening in this country.
Many are not.
There's no question. And I think there's lots of reasons that the outcome landed the way it did. And there are people who are frustrated, like the ones you referred to, and there are people who are vindicated and very happy, like you may very well be. But my only point is, if we don't at least try to come together and those who are vindicated feel like they try to embrace those who don't feel vindicated. Once again, and those who
you're putting the onus on the sore winners when it's the sore losers that are going to be the problem.
No, and it's also incumbent upon the losers to be introspective enough themselves to say, okay, how can we make this work?
Takes two to tango.
That's the whole point.
Okay, let's watch how it works, and I will point out when I'm unhappy with the return to TDS, and then you can be unhappy when you see people gloating. How's that?
We haven't got to January 20th.
I know, and I'm already saying. Do you know that the tariffs are already putting us into a recession? Which I'm saying. With gloat, you take out the L. Do you know what you get? Goat.
Yeah.
Cheese will be next.
Coming up on Squawk Pod, Americans seem to vote with their hearts, and emotions run high throughout an election process. Our next conversation is no different, and it might even be hard to listen to, but it's authentic and maybe reflects discussions in your own life. One of our guests used to be on Donald Trump's team, perhaps infamously Anthony Scaramucci, and the other is currently in Donald Trump's camp, Vivek Ramaswamy.
We don't want those type of campaign promises fulfilled.
I disagree respectfully.
Despite stark and vivid feelings this election and in the days after, Scaramucci and Ramaswamy can agree on one thing.
We lost, they won, but it's America.
And my advice to our fellow Republicans is that after, yes, we won and won decisively, we're done criticizing Kamala Harris or Joe Biden or the past.
You're listening to Squawk Pod, bringing you the best, most important conversations from CNBC's Squawk Box. Today with Joe Kernen and Andrew Ross Sorkin. Here's Andrew.
Now for a look at expectations for a second Trump term, plus Bitcoin and so much more. I want to bring in Strive Asset Management co-founder Vivek Ramaswamy and Skybridge Capital founder and managing partner Anthony Scaramucci. I want to thank both of you for joining us. A lot to discuss. Before we even get into sort of the economics of where this goes, I want to actually go to Anthony, and I know that you've been outspoken throughout the campaign, and ultimately we're on the losing end of it, and just wanted to get your reaction to it.
Well, first off, congratulations to Vivek and the team. I mean, they had an unbelievably well-executed campaign, and also Susie Wiles is somebody I know a very long time. Congratulations to her on being the chief of staff. Listen, we lost, they won, but it's America. And one of the things I like about Vivek is that he is an American and he wants to unify people. So I'm hoping this will be that type of discussion. There were certain things that happened in that campaign, Andrew, that I'm not in love with. There was a coarseness to some of the rhetoric. There was some threatening suggestions to people related to being political adversaries and so on and so forth. And I hope we can put that rhetoric aside and we can move forward and think about what we're going to do as a country to unify the country and make the people in the country, particularly the lower and middle income people in the country, more prosperous.
The rhetoric got heated everywhere. I think you got pretty heated, Anthony, at times.
Look, Joe, how did I get heated? What did I say, Joe?
About Trump?
Yeah, what did I say? I said I repeated what he was saying. And I said this is wrong.
Anthony,
come on, Joe.
You have had an utter disdain for Trump. You'll always be welcome at the table of legacy media and have people nodding as you trash Trump. That's always going to happen. But aren't you the slightest bit embarrassed or at least humbled about how wrong you were about the feeling of most Americans, let me finish, and for enthusiastically supporting a candidate who a majority of people thought had no business being anywhere near the Oval Office? And you're a Republican, and you saw all the different policies that she was talking about are anathema to what you've thought your whole life, and yet you went along with it. Do you ever eat any crow, or not even a little crow wing, really like a little capon? Or you just, Michael Avenatti could still be on TV trashing Trump. You'll always find a place on TV If he wasn't in prison, he'd still be on CNN running for president with Brian Stelter. Just give me a little bit, Anthony, about how wrong you were.
Joe, first of all, I immediately put out a congratulatory tweet. They won, we lost, in the immortal words of Barry Diller when he lost a Paramount deal. Next, Joe, what would you like me to do? Do you want me to get on bended knee before you?
No, I thought you were going to start that it's going to
That's not even what America is about, Joe. We have a violent disagreement about lots of things related to Trump's personality. You like Trump. I was up close to Trump. I got to see the ugliest of what he is. And by the way, Joe, it's not just me. There were 40 of us that worked for the president that warned people. So
I think he's been very good for your. I think he's been very good for your career, Anthony. I think he's been incredibly good. You're here, are you not? And you're going to be welcome anywhere you want to go. I think he's been very good for you, and you'll be able to live off this for another 4 years.
Joe, why don't you calm down? Why don't you calm down a second, Joe? We know each other a long time. Are you saying that you and I can't disagree on somebody's personality? Is that what you're saying? And you're saying what I'm saying in terms of identifying those features and traits of the personality. You don't see those too, but you're choosing to ignore them?
I guess 75 million people looked at everything you looked at and decided that there were other things that.
But there were 67 million people that didn't, Joe. That's what makes America, Joe. That's what makes America, Joe. But you're saying to me that stuff that I was saying wasn't factually true. If somebody's saying they're going to use the American military to go after their political adversaries, and I say, geez, that sounds very un-American to somebody like me.
Is that what he said, Vivek? Oh, no. Is that what he's going to do?
Of course he said it.
So let me see if I can
we'll go to the
be
tape.
helpful here for a second, guys. Let me just take a moment to say this was a decisive win. All right, put aside whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. This is the first time a Republican has won the popular vote.
I admitted that it was
decades.
decisive, and Joe wants something more. He wants like an extra pound of flesh or something like that. So I admitted that it was a win. I congratulated you guys.
So I think this is useful in one way, which is we have had a heated year and a half headed into this election. And right now, in these few days afterwards, let's process what happened. Okay, you have every county that Joe Biden performed well in, every county across the country. There was not one in which Kamala Harris did better. Now, this is not to dunk on the other side. What I'm in this to say is that decisive win gives us an opportunity as a country. And my advice to our fellow Republicans is that after, yes, we won and won decisively, we're done criticizing Kamala Harris or Joe Biden or the past. Let's turn the page to chase the future. One of the things I loved about Donald Trump's victory speech, and I was personally there, was him beginning to talk about this golden age in America. I think everyone wants that golden age, a growing economy, an immigration system that works. We now have an electoral mandate to deliver it. And so to Republicans, my ask is, you know what, let's put aside our own sense of grievance or vengeance or whatever. We won, let's use it. We're running to something. And my ask of Democrats and to those on the left who may not have liked Donald Trump and may not like him still is to say, just give him a chance and give us a chance to say that, you know what, we have a chance to unite this country in a way that we have not in a very long time. Most people favor economic growth. Most people want to pay lower taxes. Most people want an American dream for their kids and an immigration system that works and secure borders for our country and don't want their kids lining up to fight in World War III. That's the opportunity that we have. And I think it's a generational opportunity that we shouldn't squander. And so, even to those who disagreed, my ask is give us a chance. And we're going to do our part by exhibiting, I hope, some grace to the people who we believe we're wrong. But in moving this country forward, that's what we're looking to do.
Vivek,
can I say something, Andrew, or not yet?
Please. No, Anthony, absolutely. And I just wanted to suggest that I appreciate the point about the grace.
Yeah, but not only do I agree with Vivek about all of that, the only thing that I would say to Vivek and the Trump people, just be very careful setting up deportation camps and deportation centers. They've got people on 60 Minutes talking about rounding up all the family members. There are people making suggestions that they're going to renounce birthright citizens for moms that are illegal where the child was born in the United States. I would just say, listen, if we're talking about grace, I would put aside those sorts of things, and I would focus on growing the economy and making people more prosperous. If Joe has an issue with me, that's fine. But let's look at the videotape of what the president-elect was saying during the campaign, and let's Joe and I sit down and go over that tape. And Joe will tell me what he likes about some of that rhetoric. Okay, you know.
Well, Anthony, I got a suggestion.
I don't like
a suggestion
it.
here, Anthony. If I may, I got a suggestion. Forget the tape of the past. Let's talk about some healthy debates in areas where I have some disagreements with you on the future.
Let's not fulfill
on
those
the question of
types
mass
of campaign promises, Vivek. We don't want those type of campaign promises fulfilled.
Disagree.
We're going to use the American military against political
You laid out your
adversaries.
view. You laid out your view. I hear you. Let me lay out the alternative case for you, which is on the case of mass deportations and securing the border. Here's the basic premise. If your first act of entering the United States of America violated the law, if you lied to the U.S. government to enter, then you broke the law, and we're a nation founded on the rule of law. That is separate from our attitude towards legal immigration, which needs some serious reform to benefit this country. But I do think that is a campaign promise that is worth keeping, even looking at smart things we can do out of the gate for voluntary deportations. You could self-deportation, end the incentives, stop funding sanctuary cities, end the usage of the welfare state by anybody who entered this country illegally, end government benefits for somebody who broke the law in entering this country. We're going to see a large wave of self-deportations from those steps alone. There's a lot of people who are still in detention. Just one more idea to make it really tangible.
I think that's the question.
Yeah.
I think, by the way, in terms of also healing the country, right, as Anthony said, there's still 67 million people who voted on the other end. And the question is, how do you actually bring those people together? And I think there is a level of, or a question about what kind of grace goes into how the immigration piece of this is solved. And that's not to say that it doesn't need to be solved. It 100% needs to be solved. It needs to be solved quickly. But, you know, all those edge cases, can it be done with grace, right? I mean, I think that's a real question. You know, we learned during the campaign, and by the way, I'm so glad that this guy is in this country and is here now and is hopefully going to do great things for this country. I'm actually talking about Elon Musk. But, you know, there were questions about his immigration status at one point. And so the point is how we can do this in a way that actually benefits the country and that people feel good about it. And I think the important point about this honeymoon period, if there is one at all, is to do it in a way where everybody is brought together and with this administration and to also not belittle, and I'm not suggesting you are at all, but to belittle those who may have questions and may care deeply about trying to hold, frankly, folks accountable for what they're saying. And I don't think that's too much to ask for.
Absolutely, Andrew. And a few things. First of all, I will never belittle those who ask questions. To the contrary, we're going to be the best version of ourselves when we have open debate and we're questioned. On the question of grace, which I agree is an important part of moving this country forward, let's be more specific about to whom that grace is owed. And I have a view on that. That is to Americans who already live here. The 67 million people who voted in this election, let's hope that didn't include too many illegal immigrants to this country, but to the people who legally voted as citizens of this country in the election, even on the other side, that's the people to whom we owe grace. So on the question of immigration here, I think first principles could be a good place to start. Think about your country like a body. No migration without consent. Consent should only be granted and should be granted to migrants who benefit America, but those who enter without consent must be removed. I think those are fair principles that most Americans actually agree with. Now let's actually look at acting upon it. Well, if I may just finish on how practical I believe it is. Remain in Mexico was the law of the land when Trump was president. Courts have actually held that it is still the law of the land right now under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. It just isn't being enforced. You have millions of migrants who are already in detention. Anyone who's committed a crime after coming here, automatic deportation. Anybody who violated the law while they're here, automatic deportation. People who are already in detention, who have not yet even integrated into the communities of this country, who have come even over the course of the last year. 12 months is not a time period for establishing roots. Easy case, automatic deportation. The question of birthright citizenship, because this is one of the most controversial ones, and you brought it up, so I want to go to the controversial case here. The kid of an illegal born in this country should not automatically enjoy birthright citizenship, just as the kid of a Mexican diplomat who's here legally in the country. If he has a kid on the soil of the United States, that kid doesn't enjoy birthright citizenship. No one thinks he does. The 14th Amendment is clear on that. The same goes for somebody who intentionally entered this country illegally for that purpose. And so, yes, some of this is going to spark some serious debate. We should have that debate.
You're going to have a nightmare on your hands, Vivek.
But I do think that we
could Pandora's box. It's
I
going
think
to
we
be a
can
nightmare.
pragmatically and in a principled way, in a way that respects people, actually says that if you're going to come to this country legally and you're going to make contributions to this country and integrate, that's what the United States of America is at our best, and we've always been. But that is separate from really prioritizing those who have entered the country illegally and are exploiting our welfare state. And I believe if we're able to do this in a principled way that respects basic human dignity, but above all, the citizens of this country, that's the kind of grace I want to see for all Americans, and to actually respect their interests, whether or not they voted for us.
Anthony?
Let's quickly, we're going to have a nightmare on our hands. You got to talk about the practicality of all this stuff. When that stuff goes down, we have a lot of people in this country that want to stay in this country, and they're law-abiding, tax-paying people that are in this country, okay? And this country does stand for something, okay? You know, that Statue of Liberty stands for something. Now, Vivek wants to say, well, there's a difference between illegal and legal, and I respect that, I understand that. But if you want to put in place a system, let's say we have 10 million people in the country that are here illegally, and let's just stipulate that for this discussion. If you want to put in place a system that removes those people, you're going to terrorize the rest of the people in the country. It's not necessary to do that.
Anthony, let me just be very specific and find some common ground here.
Right.
Let me just, because I think we have some
between you
common
and Joe,
ground here.
at some point I'll get a sentence in, but go ahead.
I think you've had a few, but I want to use this to be useful here and establish some common ground. Do you believe that somebody who's entered this country, even in the last 6 months, who's in detention, should be returned to their country of origin? I do. Do you believe somebody who's committed a crime while they've been in this country should instantly be deported to their country of origin? I do. And do you also believe that we should not be giving out welfare benefits to anybody who's actually entered this country illegally, government benefits of any kind? I do. And if we take care of those things and stop funding sanctuary cities, I think we're already going to have made a meaningful leap on addressing this in a rational way. And I think you agree with me.
I got to give Vivek. I got to give the last word to Anthony, and unfortunately, we only have a minute. Anthony.
Okay. All right. So
it's yours.
I'll talk quickly. Listen, I respect Vivek, and congratulations on the win. But the way he's explaining it is too simplistic. And as Vivek knows, President Trump won on feeling and emotion and the culture. And the Democrats are going to have to examine what they did to lose. Even the Catholic vote, Trump won the Catholic vote. And I'm just telling you, this is a type of thing that will inspire fear in people. It'll tip us into a recession. It'll reduce our tax revenues. And by the way, a lot of the people that are here, if we figured out a pathway to citizenship for them, they're going to look like the rest of the country. A good majority of them are going to vote Republican. Some will vote Democrat. And I'll say something. I'll finish with one thing. The best among us choose not to judge human frailty so harshly. We should figure out a path for these people, because I'm telling you, they help America. Most of them do. The ones that Vivek are talking about, they're doing illegal things. Totally understand that. Right. But there's a lot of law-abiding people here that are paying taxes.
We got to end it. It was a great discussion. I hope we can do it again.
No, 2-on-1, Joe. I felt like Trump, Joe.
More Squawk Pod is right ahead, like work from home Fridays, maybe on their way out. We'll be right back. This is Squawk Pod from CNBC.
Up and Andrew, Q.
We've got a story for you. Employees at the Washington Post, they are being ordered back to the office 5 days a week, just like us here at the desk. According to a memo to employees, to managers, they have to comply with the policy by February 3rd. And then some others, June 2nd. So you've got some time, folks. The new policy at the Jeff Bezos-owned company mirrors similar in-office mandates for Amazon workers, though I think this is a very different and distinct policy. The memo was met with disapproval, apparently, from the Washington Post Guild, an employee union that called the policy inflexible and outdated. So the debate about where to do the work. But Will Lewis, the head of the Washington Post, said, look at how inspired they were, meaning the staff was, when they were all in the office the night of the election. And that's what they were sort of making the argument to...
Till the results started coming in.
No, but the thing is, when you're in an office and you're doing the work...
No, Andrew, in a business like that, remote work is fine. And I actually think maybe even better since the groupthink so pervasive at the Washington Post, you wouldn't have to be there to hear it. You can be out on your own and maybe come to some different conclusions. And you don't need to be in an office setting at a place like the Washington Post. You don't need to be there, whereas other places, I think
it depends what the business is. We talked about what we call deep work, and when you're actually like doing writing and stuff, sometimes it's better. And look, the joke is if you were a salesperson and possibly a reporter, I mean, when I was young, I remember if you were in the... When I was young. If you were in the newsroom, there was an editor that used to walk around and say, what are you doing here? There's no news inside the building. Mm-hmm. And I remember that. And I also remember a very similar phrase with some ad salespeople at one point where someone said, there's no money here. Like, go out and, right? So if you're a salesperson or a reporter or people that have to be out and about, being in the office is a different thing.
Right.
Depends what the gig is.
Does. And I mean, I remember, when you're a telemarketer, I don't know what you call a stockbroker, but when you're one of those guys, you're making calls in the office to set up going out to see people to try and get them as clients, usually, unless you work for, I don't know. A new report in the Oregonian says Intel plans to bring back free coffee and tea at its work sites, and that's a perk that was eliminated during a round of cost-cutting last summer. In an internal memo, the company said, we understand that small comforts play a significant role in our daily routines. The company did not resume offering free fruit, another perk that was eliminated last summer. And we're going to update this story, as important as it is, if we get any other details.
And Joe, I have some news for you.
Tell me.
I know you don't always agree with my politics.
No.
But apparently, in the great county of Bergen County, New York, New Jersey rather.
Ridgewood, yeah.
There's a list of folks who have been written in for the presidential election. And yours truly, Andrew Ross Sorkin, was one of the write-ins in Bergen County. I don't know who that person was. I want to thank them for your vote.
I like
and
that.
I appreciate it very, very much.
You know, Lee Cooperman said Mitt Romney. I'd much rather have you than Mitt Romney.
Make sure you join us. Have a great weekend, everybody.
That's the pod for today and for the week. We made it, maybe one step closer to ARS 2028. Take a rest this weekend. Log off for a bit. I mean, keep downloading podcasts, but listen whenever you want. Squawk Box is hosted by Joe Kernen, Becky Quick, and Andrew Ross Sorkin. We're on TV weekday mornings on CNBC at 6 Eastern, and we're in your ears anytime in this podcast. Please follow Squawk Pod. Tell a friend to follow too. We'll meet you back here on Monday. Have a good weekend.
We are clear. Thanks, guys.